As you know, if you've watched my channel lately, I like to test out all the new campaign ships with a free to play commander at the helm. That way, we get an idea of if the campaign ship will function well for free to play players. But that doesn't mean I think the free to play commander is the best option in every case. I know in my video on the Blücher last week, I was using a free to play commander, but I actually think the Warhammer collaboration commander, Augustin Riegerwald, is probably the best choice for the Blücher. I'll show you the build now. The mod selection is still the same with Aiming Systems Mod 1, Propulsion, Concealment, Main Battery Reload, but now we've got Riegerwald commanding the ship, and his inspirations are Makawa and Von Essen. And then, of course, you can see the skill selection as well. We'll get into detail on what skills I think are valuable for this ship and why I've selected the two inspirations I did. But before we go any further, as we set up here to fire at the Rochester, which is spotted courtesy of this friendly Z-23, I should note that Riegerwald is not currently available in the store. No idea if or when he will become available again, but he was part of the Warhammer collaboration stuff. So, if at some point in 2026 you see in the patch notes that Warhammer collaboration is returning, good chance Riegerwald might be up for grabs then. So I'd say keep an eye out because he wouldn't only benefit the Blücher. He'd be good on any German cruiser. He really spices up the AP. And Blücher's AP, already it's spicy. There you go. Two citadels on the Rochester, slightly angled, first blood. That is because Blücher, of course, has improved AP penetration angles. And that leads me into the inspirations I selected. Nikolai von Essen. He's in the first inspiration slot above Makawa. Makawa, of course, gives you more concealment on the cruiser, which is always valuable in my mind. But Von Essen improves the minimum ricochet angle of your ship's shells. So we've got slightly different numbers on the improved pen angles for Blücher. Now, at this point, the minimum ricochet angle is 58.2 degrees. That's up from the base of 55. And keep in mind, whenever an AP shell hits an armor surface, a lot of calculations are performed. One of the calculations is whether or not the shell will ricochet. And when you have the minimum ricochet angle at 58.2 degrees, the shell will not ricochet unless it hits an angle of 58.3 degrees or higher. But keep in mind the minimum ricochet angle part. Even if it does hit an armor surface that's angled at 60 degrees, there's still a chance that it will penetrate. It's not until you get to a 65-degree angle with these Blücher guns that a ricochet is guaranteed. So you can damage much more angled targets with the AP. 55 to 58.2 degrees is not exactly a big change, but Riegerwald also has some other stuff going for him. His own base trait reduces the main battery reload on the cruiser by 2.85% at the level I have him, which is 16 Legendary 3, and it also increases cruiser main gun AP shell damage. And then the rest of his skills are mostly conventional. In the first row rather, we've got Beyond Range, which gives us 10% more main battery range. Certainly useful. In the third row, we've got Punch Through, which buffs the cruiser's AP shell damage by 10% and increases the penetration multiplier by 6. And then in the fourth row, we've got Fixated, which gives us a Dispersion and a Sigma buff. And of course, in the legendary row, we have Fully Packed for more consumables. It's in the second row where we find Riegerwald's unique skill. It's called Kraken Shells. What it does is buff the cruiser maximum speed, and Blücher is already a fairly fast cruiser that has a specialized engine boost that can bring it up near 40 knots. You can see that engine boost is in effect now as we shoot at this Jaeger, and I don't think we get the kill. But we're quickly approaching 40, and I think if we sailed in a straight line, we probably would be hitting 40. So that's good. But the main thing, the main use of Kraken Shells is that it gives an AP penetration multiplier of 10%. Now, What that means is if you look at any ship's spec page for the main battery guns in the AP, you'll see under the AP shells an armor penetration value at point blank range and an armor penetration value at max range. And these are sort of set numbers at point blank and max with a lot of variation in between. AP shells penetrate more the closer they are, they penetrate less the further away the target is. Well, the numbers are as follows with Riegerwald at the helm. We've got 585.1 millimeters of AP penetration at point blank, which should be enough to get through the battleship belt armor of quite a few battleships and citadel them. I think we'll see that here as we get into point blank range versus this Hawk. And then, of course, the penetration falls off considerably at maximum range. We have 223.8 millimeters of pen, which would be enough to penetrate the upper belt armor and the deck of most battleships you're going to encounter, not to mention cruisers, but it's certainly not going to be chewing through belt armor. You need to get very close for it to do that, and of course there we get shatters against the Hawk. We're going to launch our torpedoes now, but we're going to follow up with another shot, and we're approaching point blank range here. See, we are able to hit the citadel, and that's not maybe super impressive. We probably would be able to do that without Riegerwald at the helm. Hawk is not, I don't think, one of the most heavily armored battleships in the world, but certainly having more AP penetration helps. And of course, the slight damage buff from the previously mentioned skills on Riegerwald has our AP doing a maximum of 6,884 damage, which that's pretty close to 7,000, and I think tremendously high for a cruiser with guns of this size. And then I should also mention, too, the speed is slightly buffed by Riegerwald as well. We have a base speed of 35.4 knots. And if you combine that with the special engine boost and its 15% bonus, I think we probably would be hitting about 40 knots. Also, I realized something about Blücher that I don't think I mentioned in my first review, and this doesn't really have anything to do with the commander selection, but the main battery guns, the AP has shorter fuses than what's typical. And the reason I know that is because I did some comparisons before sitting down to record this. If you look at the fuse timer on Blücher, it says 0.025 seconds. Most ships with conventional fuse times on their AP guns are 0.33 seconds. The British, I believe, are 0.015. So 0.025, that's improved short fuses over conventional AP fuses, but it's not quite as good as British. And this is all to say that I wonder whether the shorter fuses would help versus destroyers, but then again, maybe not, because the fuse arming threshold is 34 millimeters, and most destroyers don't have 34 millimeters of armor unless they're Cabarrus or Palo de Emilio or something like that. Anyway, just a thought that maybe needs some more examination. But the primary reason to use Riegerwald just comes down to the AP. The AP on Blücher, I consider it to be excellent. It's got fantastic AP alpha, it's got good pen, and it's got these improved penetration angles. All of this makes it very spicy, and if you can slightly buff that by using a commander like Riegerwald and inspirations like Nikolai von Essen to improve the pen angles, well, I think that's the way you build into this ship. Now, there are a couple people out there, or at least one person, who keeps asking me if I've tried Ezerlane Graf Spee at the helm, and I have not, but I think Ezerlane Graf Spee could also work pretty well. Her main purpose, though, isn't to buff the firepower of the ship, but rather to buff the survivability indirectly. I consider concealment to be a survivability buff because being dark means you can't be shot at, and Ezerlane Graf Spee, mostly her skill set is designed around the unique skill Ghost to give you an 8% concealment buff. That would probably be valuable on the Blücher as well, but I think with this build, using just the concealment mod and Mikawa, we're at about 10 kilometers concealment, which is fine. But maybe we'll try out Ezerlane Graf Spee sometime in the future. I just wanted to show you this battle here and talk about Riegerwald. I don't think it was the most spectacular battle you've ever seen, but we did respectable damage. We got to see some excellent results out of the AP. Nearly had a Kraken, actually, 4 kills, if only there had been one more red left alive, but it is what it is. So if you have Riegerwald and you're going for the Blücher, this is who I'd ultimately recommend you put at the helm. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.